Now, if I pass this around, you look at this, you're going to see that this part ended up not being the same length. Doesn't matter. It'll all work out. Yeah, and so here you go. Now, when you're actually going to put this into the mitten, this is what's going to slide into the mitten. Like this, okay? Because you don't want to see the seam inside. And you know, this is stretchy down here, but I want it stretchy so that I can cut it off where I want it to be. So there's, I'll pass that around. And is this, no, those are the two that are down. There we go. So I'll sew up my other one on the back. So that's all there is to the liners. And so if you can do the liners, you can do the mittens. And the fun part is, you know, putting your sweaters together to create your designs, I guess. And decide what you want to put together, different textures. Are fun to work with the textures and the weaves. So here I've poked my thumb through again. And I trimmed off inside. I'm just going to lay that like that. And I'll sew my second one. And we're going to hope we don't have two right-hand mittens or two left-hand. I have a 40-plus-year-old sewing machine. I bought this for $125 when I was a sophomore in high school. And I have the same old machine. I took it to get cleaned here this last fall. Do you guys know who cleans sewing machines? Roger Holstein. He's out on East Highway 50, and he charged me $30 to clean my machine up and get it working. It was wonderful. But he doesn't work on the fancy digital ones. Now, if you look at this, you can say, well, the other one had a space here, and this one here is the same length. Yeah, it is. It's going to get cut off anyway. Okay, let's hope we don't have two of the same. All right. We have our pair of liners. How long did that take? Not that long. Okay, everybody got that down. All right. Then what I do is I simply try to use, it's just because it's me, 3 different sweaters to put the mittens together, but 2 sweaters is fine. You could make the mittens all out of the same pair of sweater, or the same sweater. You know, you don't have to mix and match, but that's the part that I enjoy doing because it lets me be creative. So I brought some sweaters along to actually cut out, and if you can see, I probably won't cut out because you guys can lay a pattern on and cut them, but I usually start with the sleeves first. It's just I have a hard time cutting up sweater. Look at this beautiful sweater, and it was cut up into mittens. And you know what? I can't cut my sweaters. It's just. So anyway, I usually start with the sleeves, and I just trim them. I cut them off here, and then I cut the seams, and then lay them out so that it lays flat and so where it's supposed to be, and it lines up. And then I lay, I experiment how wide the sleeve part is. I sometimes can lay one of these on. Sometimes there's not enough room to do that, and so then I end up with maybe using, this up into the shoulder, or up into the upper arm part. This one's pretty narrow here, but, and I'm not, look at this. I know, doesn't that just make you sick? But, But you know, what you get in the end is kind of cool. Now, I don't cut all the way to the end because we want this for the cuffs. And I like my cuffs fairly wide. This is about 3.5 inches. A lot of the things I looked at said 2.5 to 3 inches. I just don't like, I like to cut my cuffs 3.5 inches, and look at the science to that. I lay a ruler down and I just move it across and get my 3.5 inches and whack it off. I also then take the other one, and sometimes I measure and sometimes I don't. And I just lay it on there. Okay, there we got our cuffs. Now I also take and make cuffs from the bottom of the sweater, and I usually just lay it down and cut 3.5 inches all the way across. And I can usually get 2 sets of mittens made out of the bottom of a sweater, because if you look at this, I use, you know, the front half and the back half, so I fold it in half and then you fold it in half again. So, you know, that you usually can get 3 pairs, or yeah, 3 pairs of mittens out of a sweater. You can use the end of the sleeves for 1 pair, and then the bottom of the sweater makes 2 more pairs. And you always look for sweaters that have these wonderful, the really nice ribbing, because some sweaters don't have that. I guess these that I have, this one here doesn't have, you know, the ribbing like this, but it'll work fine, because you want that part that doesn't fray. I mean, you really can't cut it from someplace else, otherwise, even though it's felted, it just doesn't, it's kind of a raw finish. So I just use the bottoms of the sweaters and the cuffs, and the ends of the sleeves. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to, I've got navy blue. Oh, here we go. So I have cut out my sweater, and I guess on this one here you can see I laid it down, and I laid it upside down and, you know, just cut out. So I took, this was a Land's End sweater. You look at my pattern. You'd think I could get a new pattern for you guys to show you, but this is my worn out pattern. And so I do the very same thing. I put the pattern down and I put my pins in the sides. Now if anybody else has better ideas, let me know, because I'm just kind of open to suggestions too. Okay, and then I decided to use the orange from this sweater. And it just so happens that this pair of mittens I'm only using 2 sweaters from. This sweater, or these mittens, are similar to that one, but I have a thing, I can't make any 2 pairs alike. So I really, and you don't have to work very hard at making them different, but so this is 3 different sweaters here. And this one happens to be 1 sweater, 2 sweaters, and that's a 3rd sweater, the bottom of the 3rd sweater. And this is boiled wool. I don't know if and boiled wool works fine too for making sweaters, just different texture. Now I think the most fun part is doing the outside. So I'm going to do the same thing again. Eyeliners, I'll put them over here. I just lay them out like that. And I want to have right sides together. And I don't do any pinning. I just plop them together, and you know, I have black thread in my machine. I used to change thread, not necessarily to match, but if it was a bright color, I'd find, you know, something that was in the orangish color, or if it was all dark, then I'd, you know, navy blue or whatever. But anymore, I just use basically black, and if it's a really light pair of mittens, I use a light colored thread, because you can't, you don't want to spend money buying thread. And Walmart, in a basket, by their notions, on the bottom shelf, has a basket of thread. They did have anyway, and the thread's $1 a spool. And they had black and white. Now, if you really start pulling on this, you're going to stretch the mitten. And you know, if you're working with stripes, you got to be careful. You don't pull too hard. Same thing with this one. When I do the outer part, I cut off the end, and I'm not careful about sewing, you know, way up to the top of that thumb, because the thumb is long anyway.
So you're only trimming the thumb?
Yep, I generally do just trim the thumb. You know, if I get a little too far in, then maybe I'll trim along here, but otherwise I don't trim any place else. And then I turn it back out again. Kind of work with it and lay it there. And I do my other one. And I like to back stitch. When I finish, because it just reinforces it. Pull the pins out, cut the thread. You know, and look, I mean, if you can see, I mean, I'm a distance away. I'm a good ½ inch from the end. That's not going to matter. And I'm going to put my backs on. I guess I didn't get that cut very good. And again, I don't pin anything. Now, holding it up, don't be alarmed. Look at that, you know, look at that length there. Don't worry about it.
You want to make sure that the pattern
is straight.
is
Yep.
on the inside.
Yep. Yep. And this one, of course, doesn't have any stripes, and so it's not too difficult. And again, I reinforce the tie. Start at the top of the mitten, and so down along each side. And sometimes, if I want it to be longer and it's not, I just yank on it and pull it down.